Do you have any creative or financial control over the game?
I even watched like a really well thought out video that a guy put out about like how to fix Rivals 2's marketing. It doesn't make me scared or afraid because it's the right thing to do. I was the first full-time employee at Beyond the Summit. We have to think about if we're willing to lose half of our player base when Malo comes out. Okay, I'll give a cop-out answer.
Okay.
Here.
I got to interview Bryan Herren of Offbrand Games. He's their director of publishing. But before that, he worked at indie game publishing for D&D Beyond, was a founder of Smash Summit. We talked about his career, Offbrand strategy as the publisher of Rivals 2, what it's like working at a creator-founded company, and so much more. Bryan, thanks for coming on the channel. What did you do before Offbrand? I know some of this, but for the folks at home.
Yeah, so I got started in games by doing commentary and statistics work for competitive Dota 2. I was what was effectively the first full-time employee at Beyond the Summit. So like late 2013, right after college, got invited by Valve to work TI3 after college, met David Gorman, LD there. He convinced me to move to California. I moved to California. We did the Beyond the Summit thing for a while.
To convince someone of. This move from...
I was in Alabama, so it wasn't hard to convince me to leave.
Okay.
But yeah, so I did that for several years. My in with this community is that I founded and ran the first two Smash Summits. And then completely out of luck and a lark, I quite literally didn't play Melee until maybe 2 weeks before Smash Summit 1 started, like kicked off, like the production. And then jumped around a little bit, spent some time at Twitch through a subsidiary company called Curse. Old ones will know, real ones will know.
You also did work in literally games publishing before this.
Yeah, so I spent the last 3 years, well, I've been at Offbrand for a year now, but before that, I spent about 2.5 years at an indie games publishing company, now called Indie.io, which was like a large-scale, small game, lots of output publishing group. So I have my name in the credits of like 50 indie games that I published.
That's really cool.
It was too many. Sorry, I have a cat. She was wanting to step on my keyboard. But yeah, so I was there for nearly 2.5 years and published a bunch of indie games there, and then convinced and or tricked the Offbrand team to let me come build game publishing at Offbrand.
Cool. One final thing, just because you didn't mention it, and because I think it's cool, and I know there's a bunch of nerds in my chat. You also made or at least worked at D&D Beyond?
Yeah, so during that that Curse period, Curse was actually the team that developed D&D Beyond.
I had no clue. All right.
So the Curse Media team, which was part of Twitch at the time, and Amazon, just a honest, literally a Friday project with people that were next to me in the bullpen, drafted up a mock of how they would do an online way to play Dungeons and Dragons. They kept working on it. It kept going well. It kept going so well that they purchased a license to distribute it. And they looked to me and they said, "Hey, Bryan, you know how to market things, right?" I was working in sales at the time. And I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "You can run like streams and things, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And so started, helping them with socials and community and streaming, and ended up running marketing at D&D Beyond for the first 2.5 years of its existence. Yeah, I've gotten really weirdly lucky of just like falling into situations with really talented people.
That's how it goes.
And it's, yeah.
I need to know from your history, what is your favorite indie game that you didn't work on?
That is a great question.
We have hard-hitting questions on this channel.
I have a hard time with like your favorite anything because it's like asking someone their favorite album. There's so many. Like
it's a bad
there's different
question.
things on different days. That being said,
or one you're enjoying like right now. If there's one that you're
I just started playing Tactical Breach Wizards, and that's really good. I'm really impressed by just that team did everything right. A lot of indie games will like have one concept or one mechanic and beat that one mechanic to death and kind of struggle at other aspects of game development. And just everything that they did for this project did well. It's also selling really, really well to be a pretty small team indie game. And then I really love games that just kind of like play with the idea of games as a medium. So like things like Inscription are some of my
That's
absolute favorites.
on my list.
I love it so much.
Everything that I know the description enough to be like, I will love this when I put the time into it.
Yeah.
I love things that do like weird meta commentary or meta stuff with whatever medium they're in.
Oh yeah. And I of course lost the entire Q1 of this year to Balatro.
Oh, I mean, we all did that. And now it's going to be out on mobile by the end of the month, so we're going to lose another
I'm not going to
quarter.
touch it. Can't do it.
You were one of the initial people for Smash Summit, despite have only picking up Melee like 2 weeks before that. How much did you know about Rivals before working with Offbrand?
So funny enough, Rivals sponsored some Smash Summits.
Yes, they did. Yep.
Yeah, so I knew Dan and I knew about Rivals from me running the event that he was promoting Rivals 1 in. So
that makes sense.
So knew him from there, and had kept up with the game, and had, I think I've been a member of the subreddit since 2016, 2017. So
Sure.
Definitely was aware of that. And then just saw him at PAX last year and was like, hey guys, what's up? Long time no see. We're doing game stuff now. You guys have a game coming out soon. What's going on? And then started a good conversation. Helped run the Kickstarter, which was a huge success, and transitioned that into what we're doing now.
Mm-hmm. Especially for this community, what has it been like learning a new game and a new community in this sort of measure? Is there anything that's like really surprised you about, not about being like a publisher, but about the rival scene specifically?
That everyone wants this game to be successful. Not that like most people don't want their games and the communities that they're a part of for their game to be successful, but like the sheer amount of goodwill this community has towards the developers and towards us, even as a co-publisher coming in with literally no track record, is really crazy.
Okay.
It's really nice to see. A lot of the feedback we get is like not even like, this is what I want. It's like these people are like, I want this game to be as big as possible, and this is what I think needs to happen for the game to be as big as possible, because I want everyone to love this game that I love so much. And that's a really nice situation to be in, I would say.
Cool. So it's not even just like, hey, can you do this with the game? But it's people that are like, I've seen this work well for other games. Can you do it? And then you have to be like, is that actually a good idea or not? But at least they're excited.
A large part of the community is like, I'm already bought in. I'm just trying to make sure that this goes well.
That's sick.
Like, you've already got me. I'm just trying to be a missionary for you. Help me do it.
That's dope. I was not expecting that the community wants the game to do well to be the surprising thing.
It's more just like just how much they want it to do well. You know what I mean? It's like it's one thing to want a game to be successful, and it's another thing to where people are like actively advocating for things. Like we saw feedback a couple of weeks ago about people suggesting that the game go into early access. No game, I've never seen a game where the community is like, hey, it'd be better if you like downgraded my experience so that we had a better chance at more people enjoying this game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't really see that very often.
Before I get into the rest, I had really good intentions before this interview of like, I'm going to add in some like funny, interesting stuff. I spent like 40 minutes scrolling through your socials to like find a funny thing to grill you on. All I learned is that you're just a giant nerd. You've done Dota, Smash Summit, you play Hearthstone, you play Magic, you've done D&D, TFT, but none of it was like, look at this weird, funny photo. It was just like, oh, if it's nerdy, Bryan's probably been involved in it somehow.
Yeah, I made a pretty serious commitment, like once I stopped doing commentary for Dota, that I didn't want to be like a personality on the internet kind of thing. And so I don't really do any like personal posting or funny posts. Sometimes, but not often.
Got it. No, it was just very funny as I'm scrolling through. I'm like, I'm not finding anything usable, but man, if it's like a tangentially nerdy thing, you've at least tracked
I've been
it
involved. Yeah.
I've kind of grouped things into the first category, which is just what is Offbrand?
Yeah. So Offbrand started about 2-3 years ago at this point, mostly as a production house that creators could utilize to make bigger, better, more ambitious content when they didn't have those resources themselves. Mm-hmm. And so, started with a group including Ludwig and others who Ludwig also always likes to do his big kind of ambitious spectacle events every now and then, right?
Yep.
And every time he did that, he was having to go through the rigmarole of like working with production companies. Some he didn't have a great experience with. He had
Sure.
worked with Beyond the Summit on a lot of things in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of thought, hey, we can start working with creators, get them the production ability they need to make their really ambitious event successful, and then partner them up with like salespeople or sponsors or get those things done and kind of just be that resource for creators who want to do more. And that's just continued to evolve and grow into Offbrand kind of doing a lot more of its own stuff.
How did the games publishing side of
Yes.
Offbrand start up then?
So a big part of the Offbrand games part was that this was something they were thinking about wanting to be involved in for a while, which is, we're
Okay.
interfacing with creators and getting them into a position to like support different things. And we've heard a lot that like creators want to get involved with games and game publishing. And completely unaware that that was something that they were thinking about doing, I reached out to LD and said, hey, I've been doing game publishing for 3 years. I think that game publishing makes sense for Offbrand.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of gave him the pitch, and to his eternal credit, like kind of took the bet on my hypothesis about it, and we decided to like spin up a vertical for game publishing. The reason why I think it works and why we can be valuable is because we have a lot of things out of the box that a lot of other publishers either can't have or have to pay exorbitant amounts of money for, which is creator exposure, in-house video production, community management, social media, marketing
Mm-hmm.
that kind of knows what's going on and has their finger on the pulse of how things are going. And so we provide a lot of value for game developers kind of like right away that they're looking for. And so it just made a lot of sense.
From Torchfire Zero, what does Offbrand as a publisher do for Aether Studios? Basically, what are your tasks as a publisher? I'm going to add a slight thing to this, which is based on the questions I've got and like talking with other people in person. A lot of folks are pretty confused about the difference between a developer and a publisher.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense that people don't really know what a publisher is, because publisher is honestly a pretty antiquated term at this point in terms of what it does. So obviously it originates from more physical distribution, and where if you were an author, you needed someone to physically print your books and distribute it to bookstores and do the deals with the distributors in other countries and all of that stuff. And in a way, that kind of idea has still kind of persisted, which is the publisher is there to take care of all of the things beyond making the art, beyond making the product, beyond making the thing. So it's the product success angle of making sure they're in the right stores, making sure people are aware of it through marketing, making sure it's like fitting into like rules and regulations. So it's a lot of the, for lack of a better word, bureaucratic stuff that if you're an indie developer, you don't really want to worry about. So you can just focus on the game.
You just want to make a cool game for people to play. Yeah.
Right. And so depending on the team, you might not have the resources to be able to do that. You might need more resources. So you need funding. A lot of publishers provide funding, investment, which is, it's a better deal than going to like venture capital, because venture capital is going to take ownership of your company. Right. And so it's more of a partnership in that way. And then what we do specifically is we really focus more on that marketing game success side. So, we're producing video content, we're running social media, we're organizing tournaments, we're organizing events, we're helping out with the store page and the assets and the graphical things that are there. We're getting creators on board and making sure they have keys. We're handling a lot of the aspects of marketing that they had the ability to do before, but not quite at our scale.
100%. Yeah.
Right. And then we also have our inventory of our events, which are great platforms to be promoting the game. And so, over the last, 3 months, there's been 3 different off-brand events that Rivals has either been a part of, where people are playing Rivals, or it's been promoted in like advertisements or like inclusions and all that stuff. So it's just about making sure people know the game. And then there's a lot of behind the scenes like feedback, and I've from having had my name on 50 indie games that were published, I know a lot of mistakes that you can potentially make.
There's so many
And so,
mistakes. There's so many ways you can mess up.
oh my God, yeah, so many ways. You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so Dan's team, I mean, they've already published 3 games themselves as Aether Studios, but there's still the occasional thing where it's like, hey, this is a best practice thing we need to make sure that we're doing. Here's some feedback on this. Here's some feedback on that. That can be really helpful just to make sure that we're making the best product possible and getting it in the hands of as many people as possible.
Sick. You mentioned a few things in there like events and tournaments and stuff that, trust me, I got a lot of questions about from people. So that's a whole section by itself.
For sure.
If you're we'll get to that if you're in chat. From Fictional Fave, do you have any creative or financial control over the game? Or Offbrand? Does Offbrand have that? Okay.
I would say control, absolutely not.
Okay.
In terms of like creative feedback, yeah, sure. Like we're involved in feedback rounds. We've been playing the betas. We've been giving our feedback. We help, give thoughts on balance or thoughts on how things should look or how things should feel. I would say a lot of the stuff that we've given some feedback on are things that you might not even think about as much in terms of creative, which is like menus.
That's actually exactly what I was thinking. Was the how a game feels outside of actually playing it is extremely important, and people don't notice until a menu feels bad.
Right, exactly. So like how that stuff is structured and done. But yeah, in terms of creative control, to be clear, like we are a co-publisher with Aether Studios in this specific situation because they've done so much by themselves already that Aether Studios is effectively also publishing this game.
Sure. Okay.
And so we're just giving feedback where we can, but in terms of control, it is their project, it is their thing. If they wanted to do X, or if they were trying to make a decision of which character do we launch next or what do we do, like we can give feedback, but we have no say in that decision getting done. That's all on Dan.
Got it. Yeah, and I know that for anybody who isn't aware, Thor or Pirate Software is also involved in Offbrand games now, and he used to work in games a ton. Well, still works in games, but used to work for Blizzard and for other companies. Right. And one thing that he talks about a ton is if you are to sign with any publisher, who IP rights go to, making sure that stays with the game. Yeah. And so I assumed with those things that you also weren't trying to make creative decisions outside of hey, how can we make this feel slightly better? From Psy4147, given Offbrand has recently become a worker co-op, and they literally say awesome move, by the way, which I agree with. I'm curious what the team's enthusiasm is like working for Rivals 2. Were the team interested in that project before the structure changed, or is that something that you all have to consider and have conversations about as development progresses? Progresses? That's how you say that.
So, 2 things about how co-ops work. Co-ops are full workplace democracy in that we vote on a lot of things, but at the same time, we don't vote on literally everything. So it wasn't a situation. It was there was a situation where the games crew has made this decision that we're working with Rivals. It didn't require everyone in the company to raise their hands to decide to do something. That being said, the way that we're structured, if we decided we didn't want to work on something, people would have the ability to say hey, I don't want to work on this anymore, and basically present a proposal to stop working on something or to not do something, whatnot. So people have the ability to veto there. But that being said, people at Offbrand are really excited about this game. I mean, it's a big reason why we chose this game to be our first game is because a lot of the people at the company come from the platform fighting community. A lot of the people here are really excited about indie games, like the way that Dan and team have structured themselves. And so in terms of everyone being excited and the co-op nature of things, what's really cool about it is everyone gets to participate in, making our game successful at our company. Even though, we've just started this games division relatively recently, but I have a marketing division within Offbrand that helps everybody at Offbrand, but they're helping out games. We have a broadcast team that helps do our broadcasts, and they're helping out games where appropriate too. And we have our video content team making trailers and all that stuff.
Sure.
And they love working on games projects more than anything because it feels more like we are part of what's happening. I mean, it's much fun for people to make a trailer about a video game than to make an ad for some
A creator.
sponsor that they're not that
Oh,
excited
sure.
about.
Yes. Yeah. Sure. No, that totally makes sense.
So people are super excited, and that's been a big reason why this has worked. Is getting buy-in across the company to help out.
Mm-hmm. Whole another section of questions. There's a lot of stuff that's like, what else is Off-Brand Games interested in? So one from Lizard Looker, are Off-Brand Games interested in publishing other games that are created by Aether Studios, the same way that you had mentioned that Aether Studios has published 3 other games out there than just Rivals 1. They have Dungeons, Lovers of Aether, and I'm blanking the card game, Creatures of Aether.
Oh yeah, they have. Yeah, I said 3, but they've published 4 other games. I always forget about Lovers of Aether.
I didn't know if that one actually counted or not, but I guess it's on
Yeah.
Steam, so yes.
Yeah. So I would say absolutely we're interested in working with them on other titles. I mean, our focus is 100% just on Rivals 2 right now. And that is 100% where their focus is as well.
Oh yeah, not the time to be doing a spinoff right now.
Yeah. But should they want to do that, my hope is that we do a good enough job that they'll come back to us and be like, hey, let's work on this again. And so, that is our hope. We don't have sequel rights or anything like that,
So it is totally possible that they're like, yep, Off-Brand's continuing to work with us on Rivals 2, but the spinoff was just us. But,
correct.
Cool.
Yeah.
What other, from Body of Water, what other kind of games are you looking at? Or is there a goal to have X number of games in the lineup at any given time?
Yeah, so we will actually have some news on that soon.
Ooh, okay.
We have, we will be continuing to sign other games and do other things. And, we don't want to just do one title because we wouldn't really be a publisher at that point, right? We would just be, a one-off kind of partnership.
I think a lot of the question was like, how soon do you want to take on another one while Rivals 2 is kicking off, kind of thing?
Yeah. So the goal for us is, and I learned my lessons at my last company about how many games can you support
at
a
one
given
time.
Yeah. And so our goal is a couple of games a year tops.
Okay.
And so and depending on the amount of lift, because some games take a lot of lift, some games don't take as much lift, depending on kind of what they are. But
you did take a pretty lift-heavy game with the first one in a competitive title that is going to be up. Rivals 1 was updated for 10 years.
Yes.
You're like, our first game is going to be a lifetime, not games as service. I guess it's technically games as service, but
our other titles are not the same. Like, so in terms of like our Off-Brand only looking for like online multiplayer games, no, we're looking at everything. If anything,
I think that's good to be having a wide variety in that.
Yeah, and we also want to be in a position where like we're giving Rivals the support that they need, and if we suddenly have 5 live service games that we're supporting, like somebody's not getting enough attention there.
Sure.
And Rivals is kind of like I said, our main priority right now. So we are looking at other titles, and we are looking to sign other things, but Rivals is our main focus right now.
Sure.
The only thing that I will say is, like, in terms of the types of games we're looking for, it's usually small teams, cool ideas, things, doing things a little bit differently, typically later in the life of the game in terms of its development, because it's kind of hard to market a game when it's coming out in 4 years. So we don't really provide a whole lot of value. We're not a huge team in terms of technical resources. So some publishers are like, hey, you work with us because we have 20 QA folks and 10 localizing people and 5 developers that are now suddenly your resources to help you out on anything that you want. We are not that. We don't have that. We don't have those resources. And so we're not as valuable to games very early in development.
Sure.
And so we're looking typically for games that are like, we feel really good about this, and this will be out in 9 months. We just really need to get some eyeballs on it, or we really need some good trailer work done.
Cool. One last question in this section from 304 Plus, and I think this is very interesting. Does Offbrand have any interest or plans in publishing other types of games? So things like tabletop games, card games, party game, like that kind of thing?
At the moment, no. But if the right opportunity come up, I don't think we would say no. We do have some experience with like physical distribution through some of the
Okay.
wider off-brand and mobile move stuff. I mean, we have the bidet company,
Oh, right. Yeah, totally forgot.
uh, and so there is some experience there with being able to do that. But at the moment, no, we don't have plans to do that. It's a little scarier getting involved in physical distribution because of costs and all that stuff.
Totally
But
get that. Yeah. Off-brand's track records with events seems to be very good so far. What are their actual plans for catching a larger audience? And then they go on to say, platform fighters have always seemed to struggle to get players without Nintendo's star power. And then I literally added in myself that, like, despite people calling this the fighting game renaissance with Street Fighter and Tekken and 2XKO, traditionally, historically, fighting games and any non-Nintendo platform fighters have been really hard sells for the general gaming landscape.
yeah, that's a great question. I even watched like a really well thought out video that a guy put out that was like 15 minutes long about like how to fix Rivals 2's marketing and like it's like once again it's like one of these things that I really appreciate actually, which
Sure.
is the community being like, I want more people to play this game. Like, don't stop marketing to me, market to them.
Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting. And that is what we found. What we have found through our like research and planning and prep is that like if you've played competitive Smash Brothers, you kind of know that Rivals is happening and coming out. You're aware of it. There's not really, you'll play it on the day it comes out and you'll like it or you won't like it. Continuing to market to that group too much is kind of closing past the sale in a way. And so what we're looking to do is make sure that we're reaching new audiences, make sure that we're providing them with strong reasons why this game is worth a shot, and then doing certain activities that are going to, get those people involved. So the off-brand events that we've promoted Rivals in have historically been like not Smash focused, right?
I've noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah, we were promoting Rivals at streamer games quite a bit.
It's
We
been
were
at the
promoting
speedrunning event at, yeah.
exactly. And so when I think about like the target audience for games, you've got like your absolute core audience of people, and for Rivals 2, that's like platform fighting people, right? Super core audience. They know what's happening. You have like another layer out, which is I think I either play fighting games or I'm part of this like Nintendo world of like I like
It's
these
the
types
two,
of
yeah.
games.
Yep.
And then there's also a group that's like I'm very online and I like the meta online games, which I would call like you're like Celeste and Hollow Knight fans, right?
Oh, okay. Games that maybe
Where
they did well, but you hear about them way more online compared to like the sales kind of
yeah,
thing.
I would say that like they just have a very strong online community, and we actually have a large crossover with that group of like
That sounds like a good thing. I didn't realize how big
it
that
is.
crossover was. Okay.
Yeah, it's like gosh, like the top if you look at like Reddit communities and stuff, like those are kind of the three big orbiting galaxies around the Rivals subreddit. It's like I'm a fan of like Nintendo games, I'm a fan of fighting games, or I'm a fan of like Hollow Knight, Celeste, like fandom games
Sure.
that have developed like a huge
Interesting.
online following.
I mean, anecdotally, when I was at Combo Breaker, I spent an hour working the Rivals 2 booth while George went to get lunch. And was every time someone would come up, I'd be like, oh, yeah, like we'd talk, whatever. And I was like, hey, what games are you here for? Expecting to hear Alt or Melee, because those games were also
Yeah.
there. And those were a lot of them, but I was shocked at how many people were like, oh, I'm here for Melty Blood and Skullgirls, or like, I'm here for
Right.
Strive or whatever. And they
Yeah.
like, do you have controllers that I can use? I don't have one, like that kind
Right.
of thing. So it
Yeah.
seems, at least anecdotally, there's a lot of people who were really excited for a platform fighting game that is developed in a way that's casual friendly, but has a like core fighting game base instead of a platform fighting game that a fighting game community is molded into that.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. One that's made a little bit more for the community in a lot of ways, I think. And so, yeah, I think that our job then is to identify those audiences and then speak to them where they're at. So working them into events that have high crossover, working with creators that are more like crossover creators. So like We try to like keep people like Coney and Alpharad who like live in those crossover worlds, like apprised of what we're doing and keeping them involved so they know what's happening. You know, making trailers that have a wide appeal, making content, doing social like content that has a more wide appeal. And then there's the more like transactional stuff, which is, like running ads on certain platforms that are targeted towards a certain audience, which we will be doing at some point in the future, for promoting the game and making sure that like we're quite literally like acquiring a new area, making sure that's done. And then also just utilizing Steam. So Steam is, you say you had a lot of questions about like store pages and Steam pages and all that stuff. I think no one really understands, even within the games industry, that game discovery is almost exclusively now the purview of Steam. People do not discover games the way they did even 7 years ago.
Yeah, you told me this. We were talking off stream at like a month or so ago. We've been trying to plan this for a long time. I got sick, and then you got sick, and then we were traveling. Yeah, and I knew that Steam was huge, but I had still assumed most of it was like word of mouth or YouTube or like any number of socials, anything like that. But no, it's literally just the Steam page.
Yeah, the Steam algorithm is extremely powerful and extremely important, and so we have to do everything we can to both like effectively feed the algorithm the right stuff to get the right people there and discover it, so that if you play Guilty Gear Strive, you see it and you're excited about it, or if you play something similar but not quite the same, you see it and you're excited about it, you go onto the page convinces you to try the game out. That kind of stuff is a really, really, really big focus for us.
Got it. Cool. What about Rivals was exciting enough for Offbrand to put their weight behind it? They said they've been excited about it since they heard it was coming out, since they were just getting into Smash, but they wanted to know also what potential you guys see from a like business or enthusiast side.
I mean, yeah, I think it was just a game that we were all excited to work on. And we knew the team. We had some history. It was going to be an easy transition to make, and I also think that it wasn't going to be a hard sell to our community and to Ludwig's community and the other creators we have involved. I think a big aspect of what we have to be aware of at Offbrand is that when we're so creator focused, it also means we have to be like above reproach on how we're utilizing our creator status on things. Because if Ludwig puts his name on something and the product is bad, right, that's really bad for him, right? And so what excited us was this team is good, their game is good, we play it. It is like I've been watching 4 months of competitive play. I don't think I've seen a gameplay bug in like 4 months of competitive beta tournaments. There's obviously some things that are going to happen in the game.
We've seen bugs, but none of them have popped up at like grands of a tournament. Yeah.
And so the game just felt great. Also, I will say that like the thing that I continue to hear from other competitive players coming in from other games is like you pick up and you play it and it just feels right.
It's got the like run it back factor of the. There's some games that I play, I'm like, that was fun, and then there's other games I'm like, I just one more game, just one more, or I stop playing. I'm friends with a couple people from Offbrand on Steam, and I get very jealous every time I notice that one of them is currently playing Rivals 2 and it's not one of the beta weekends. And I'm like, well, I get it, but also I also want to be doing that right now.
So it's just a combination of we like the game. We think the game was great. They needed what we had to offer, and it was not going to be a hard sell for our community. It's a pretty natural fit. So those three things kind of came together as to what made this happen.
Who do you play in Rivals or Rivals 2?
Maple.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a Maple man. Which is funny because I play Peach in Smash, and Maple is nothing like Peach.
Nope. Well, maybe when Palm gets at
throwing vegetables or throwing plants, I think, is probably the only thing that's
the horticulture angle.
Yeah. But I don't know. Maple just felt good to me. I liked the movement. I liked the range on their like special attacks. I liked the combo setups with. Every time I am able to special pummel, regrab, throw, acorn, forward smash, kill someone, my dopamine. Oh my God, I just get flooded with it. I love that combo so much. It's just so fun.
Event side of things. from Fictional Fave, does Offbrand handle general funding or only marketing and tournaments? Let's specifically say they're wondering if you are going to run events versus sponsor events or a mix of both.
So yes to running events and supporting events. We will be doing both. We will be talking, I think, before the end of the year, hopefully before the end of the year, maybe earlier next year, in terms of what that literally looks like.
Sure.
And so, I mean, obviously a big part of our value is our ability to run great live events. So it makes sense that we will be doing that for Rivals in some capacity. And then even
that was one of when Offbrand was announced to be doing this, that was one of the things I was the most excited about.
Right.
Even though I was like, I know this isn't huge for the marketing, but as someone who's gone to so many events, having huge production value on Rivals things, it's like haven't really gotten that often. That's amazing. I'm super excited.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're super excited about all that kind of stuff. You know, can't talk about what those events will look like yet, but we will be able to talk about them relatively soon. And then we've already been helping support and organize tournaments before launch. So, you know, a lot of the work that you've seen, a lot of the tournaments already, you know, we were utilizing our connections from our past in running events and being part of Smash stuff to make sure that Rivals was in a good spot. They had the support they need, tweeting out about signups and things. And so, so we will be doing all that and helping support events and stuff. And there is, in terms of like supporting players directly, we have some exciting plans for what that will look like in terms of like an ecosystem of support in some way around people. But we don't have anything we can share yet, as that's still being kind of done. But yeah, it's a huge thing that the Rivals teams cares deeply about. I mean, they have SBS and George on their team who are like community and esports people. Even beyond what we do, they are all doing their own stuff too for Rivals community and esports. And so it's a huge focus for them and will continue to be a big focus.
Can we expect more events with Rivals as the main frontline game, such as Heatwave in Arizona? Or is the plan going to be to keep Rivals at Smash focused things or fighting game focused things? Or is it like a combination thereof?
I think that's mostly not up to us. I think, you know, we will run Rivals events. And then in terms of like what that means for other events, like it'll be up to those organizers, right?
Sure,
like,
that makes sense.
We won't be in a position where we're asking for it to be only Rivals, and we won't be asking for like other games to be like not shown or anything like that.
To be a side game,
Right. And so it's really going to be up to other organizers. Our hope is that people are so excited to play Rivals and that we've created a system of like rewarding people for running events.
That the numbers get big enough that, sure.
Exactly.
Cool.
But we're not going to dictate.
Yep, makes sense. And yeah, it makes sense that if you're running events, it'll be mainly Rivals specific. And then, all right, but a different TO they can do their own Rivals only thing. They can do a big stuff, whatever.
Yeah. And we do run our own Smash events every now and then. Ludwig likes to run his own Smash events. So like the idea of, you know, there's LACS, which is Ludwig's internal Smash series. Like the idea of Rivals being included in one of those in the future, isn't crazy, right?
Yeah.
So
if
where
he already is running ult and melee, it's like, all right, we'll put in a third. Yeah.
Right.
Well, actually, this is a question from me. I forgot that I put my own question in here. What sort of activations are you interested in? Things that you think would be cool that aren't strictly a competitive focus. So anything that is an activation with creators, I would go the most competitive I would allow in your answer is something up to like a Sage Am Slam style. We are teaching new people how to play a game, but we're not expecting them to be number 100 in the world by the
That's
end.
exactly the kind of stuff that we're excited to do on top of the competitive stuff, which is
I want to be
personality focused,
so
fun, casual. Making people show that the game is also like I think what is particularly strong about Rivals is that if you've played another Smash game, you know, it's pick up play. Oh, this plays like me playing Brawl in college with my friends with items on, right?
Even
it's
if you don't get the specifics,
Right.
Yeah.
And it's relatively easy to pick up and play at a decent level. I mean, every game hopes to have a, you know, low skill floor, high skill ceiling, right?
Yes.
And so I think Rivals is good at that. And so we want to be showcasing just how easy it is to pick up and play. One aspect of this that is like, you know, part of this like tangential ways that we're marketing the game is that Ludwig did this God Gamer Gauntlet thing with CDawg VA. CDawg VA, obviously not even part of the Smash community, very separate, but in that tangential little area. and he had never played Rivals before.
Oh, I didn't know they did
And
Rivals in that. Okay, cool.
yeah, they did for the first one only because it was the only one that was up during the beta weekend.
Got it. Okay.
But the very first one they tried, they did Rivals, and it was very funny to see Connor go from "I hate this game sucks, God, this is miserable, oh my God." Also, he's playing on like 90 ping because he was in Japan.
Oh, right. Sure.
To suddenly, at the end of it, when Ludwig was like,
Time for the next
all
game.
right, for the next one, we can't have Rivals because they won't be in the beta. And Connor's like, oh man, I really liked Rivals. So to see him like kind of make that transition of like learning how to play a game and getting good at it, and then like falling in love with a character, all of those things, those experiences we want to show because I think that's what gets people excited about playing it.
Sick.
If you've never played those types of games.
Another question from Body of Water. This is more about you specifically than about with Rivals. Just because you've done so many events. What's an event that you have always wanted to do, Summit or otherwise, but you couldn't because of some limitation? It could be something
like
for
a type
Rivals.
of event I wanted to produce.
Yeah, but you just weren't able to for one reason or another.
Oh man. I'm not really as much on the production side, so it's not like I've like pitched this and never had it happen.
Sure.
But I've always liked the idea of there being some kind of longer scale like war game type of stream where I grew up in rural Alabama.
Okay.
And I grew up maybe 15 minutes away from a major military like outpost and like base. And they would always close down like the forest around the military base for a weekend, and people would go and play 3-day like war game paintball with like takeovers and like capturing forts and resource management and like upgrades and like literally like you're playing like a battle royale in real life with that kind of stuff. I've always been surprised that people haven't tried to do more like let's put 100
creator
people
3-day
in
thing.
Conquest, right?
That'd be
have
crazy.
teams.
Okay.
And I think there needs to be more like real life physical content that is gamified.
I can see that.
I
Yeah.
think you've seen it with Mr. Beast a little bit, but it's more like game showified than it is gamified. And so I think there is like some exciting ways to see how people would like respond to like a video game situation in real life. You know what I mean?
Final question that was submitted ahead of time, and then we can just get to chat stuff. It literally just says, "Come on, Brian, what does Offbrand have cooking? Can you leak something?"
No.
Can I leak something?
We are cooking. I mean, I guess the main thing that I leaked is that we have more games that we're going to sign, but like, of course,
that is
we're
a
gonna
big
do
leak.
that, right?
But it's also the most ambiguous leak.
Yeah.
Cool.
Other video game. The company that has now been formed to work on video games will continue to work on video games. Yes.
Ooh, a second video game. What are you most looking forward to about the game's release?
People's reaction. I think the thing that I've been most excited about and has made me feel the most fulfilled is when people get to play the game for the first time and they're like, oh my God, this plays so good. This feels so good. I really enjoy this. This is great. I think, and I don't want to throw shade here, but I think there's been a lot of excitement over the last 5 or 6 years about the next platform fighting game that's coming out, and none of them have quite fulfilled their promise, right? Sure. And so some of them are very successful. I mean, every time I look at Brawlhalla's numbers, I'm like, oh my God, these guys are doing
People are just
great.
not aware of how big that game is constantly.
Yeah, it's huge.
For years,
It's
people
huge.
have not been aware of how big that game is.
It's huge. But yeah, so like, I'm just excited for people to just like, hopefully we can, at least in our own small way, fulfill the promise of, finally a platform fighter with good net play that feels smooth on Steam, on PC that people can play. I have seen the behind the scenes numbers of how many people play Slippy, and it's a lot. I've
always been so curious about that because I know it's not
a lot.
public. I've always
It's
been
a lot.
so curious because I would love to compare the Slippy player count, like average, to like Steam charts on a bunch of other fighting games. I think it'd be so interesting. I know it can't be public for a lot of reasons.
But it's, if we can just acquire some of that, like I'll be happy and excited. I just want to. Cool. I'm excited to see how people respond to the game.
You had mentioned that there was almost like a year of Offbrand, you working for Offbrand in terms of like making games before there was the official announcement of
Yes.
Offbrand Games exists.
Yes.
So two-parter, what was it like just having at least like 6 months of you being like, I can't tell anybody what my job is? And also the like, what is it like working in that realm of like, we have a bunch of cool stuff that we just cannot say anything about, or we're even just reaching out to people at all?
Yeah, I mean, that first part makes it hard to actually do your job because you're like, hey, I would like to talk to you about something, but I can't tell you what. Here's an NDA. And they're like, I don't even know why I want to talk to you to sign an NDA.
Yeah, sure.
So that was obviously tough. But thankfully, I will say we very quickly, I mean, my first event that I really worked as Offbrand was PAX last year.
Sure.
Saw Dan, started having a conversation pretty quickly. Started talking about the Kickstarter pretty quickly after that. So that was like, we've been working on Rivals throughout the whole time. So that was good internally for me in terms of like, I've come on to Offbrand with, a hypothesis of this can be a good thing. Game publishing can be a thing. We've hired people. We've committed resources to what we're doing. And so that was important to have, to be working on something and to be doing something, and seeing success from it so that we could continue to invest and go down the line. And then, waiting was just about, we didn't want to say we were doing something without proof that we were doing something. We didn't want to say, hey, we're a game publisher now. And they're like, what are you publishing? And we're like, we don't know yet.
We're figuring that out. Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't want to do like an announcement type thing. We wanted to be like,
I did like that you announced that Offbrand Games existed at the same time and we are publishing Rivals 2.
Exactly.
I literally made a joke tweet the day that
I saw that.
happened.
I saw the joke tweet. It was funny.
I thought there was no it was just Dan saying like, hey, I've got a cool thing. And it was the IGN Live, which meant there was like 50 announcements that day. So I was like, oh yeah, there'll be a Rivals thing. And then I saw, I think Ludd or Offbrand was like, we're going to be at IGN Live. And I'm like, it'd be so funny if it was the same announcement. Oh yeah, no, it just was the same announcement.
Yep.
In fact, there was several people who worked for Rivals or Offbrand that after the announcement went live, I think immediately went back to like or retweet it because
I think that might have been me.
It might have been.
Because I saw we shared it around on the Discord. Everyone was like, "Why has he figured it out?"
That's so funny, and that was not me like actually trying to make guesses. That was me just being like, "Look at this funny coincidence," and then was still shocked when you all walked on stage at the same time. And it's like, "Oh, okay, no, that's just Dan and Ludwig and Thor. Got it, cool." Yeah. Question from the one Outcast. I think this is a great question, actually.
This is a good question.
What's the plan for people to stay playing Rivals 2 on release? So not all of we're getting ready for release hype marketing, but once the game's been out for 6 months, how are you guys trying to keep people playing?
How do we keep people engaged? Yeah. I will say if you've been playing the betas, you'll know that there is, cosmetic reward progression systems in the game there that we've been testing and building. So that is not the final version of what that will look like. But, there will be character stuff. There will be progression systems in the game. Play more, you get rewards, right, to make you feel like you're leveling up your character. All the standard kind of online game stuff. We unfortunately didn't hit the ranked at launch reward for the Kickstarter. So that's something that we're like working on kind of simultaneously with launch in terms of what ranked at launch will look like. Right now we have ELO, so there's still skill-based matchmaking. Right?
It's just not as tight and as tracked, yeah.
Yeah, and we do have the ability to like share leaderboards and stuff, and so there will be the ability to like show people like who is doing the best. Like, we have I know the top 100 like ELO people for the betas are.
You guys have been sharing that it's like top 10, top 15.
We've been sharing like the top 10s and stuff. Yeah. And so the server setup is actually really powerful because I can literally look at like, okay, what is the win rate for rasters in this ELO bracket on this day and get the data, which is super cool.
Can I ask?
I'm a stats guy, so I want to figure that out.
Can I ask a stats question quick?
Yeah.
Who is the most popular character in the betas so far?
Most popular. Dan has expressed to not want to share data on those kinds of things yet. So I do want to do it at some point. Most popular I thought you were going to ask for like win rate data.
Not win rate.
That was definitely going to be.
I am looking for most played character.
Well, I will. Okay, I'll give a cop out answer.
Okay.
Here, and that it's Arcane, and it's only Arcane because the way we started tracking it was the week that Arcane.
Oh, okay.
The weekend that he came out. So people were playing him more than anybody else because it was the new character to play.
Yeah, it's like I play a lot of Street Fighter, and every time a new character comes out, I have to remind myself, I'm like, I have to prepare for at least a week of ranked only being this character.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing that I will say, and I will, and it won't assuage anyone's ability to complain at launch, but the thing that I am extremely impressed about is when you look at high-level matchmaking, how small the gap from the best to worst character is.
Cool.
It's extremely small.
Nice.
For online 1v1 fighting games. Like the game, I'm really impressed with how balanced the game is at its current stage between characters.
Yep.
Because I was going back and I was looking at stuff like, okay, because I know what a win rate in like Dota or League of Legends is, right? Like characters go from like, 56 to like 46 win rate on average at high levels, right? Like, but I'm like for one-on-one, that must be worse, right? One-on-one, it must be more extreme because there's less characters involved. And I was looking at like Tekken's launch month character win rates. And like they had a character in at launch that had like a 32% win rate that was just trash. And it's like, we're nowhere near that for any character. And I was like, okay, that just makes me feel good about the balance of the game, that we don't have anybody that's like literally unplayable, you know? I do want to get back to that question because I don't think I fully answered it, which is like other ways to keep people engaged in playing.
Sure, then keep going.
Because there's character progression, but there is more than that, right? Okay. Like there is some stuff that we're going to announce in terms of like ways to make you want to come back on a consistent basis. There will, like, even though, we didn't hit the goal to get ranked mode in at launch, it is like I said, a priority that they're working on literally right now. So it will not be long after launch that rank comes out, hopefully.
Oh, sick.
And so that's going to be a big focus for us in getting that in. So
there's my leak. There's the soundbite now. Is rank will be soon, and then no context.
Well, soonish. I will say it's first first major feature priority. Yes. First major feature priority is getting ranked in some way. And so when soon is I have no idea. I'm also not on the development team, right?
Exactly. So. Yeah. Also, I feel like game dev soon can be anything from a day to like 4 months or a year.
Valve soon is 4 years.
Yep.
And so the other things are that, and then there's going to be ways that we want people to like kind of come back and see what's happening. Rivals has committed, and Dan has talked about a pretty aggressive desire in terms of the amount of characters added. Like they're going to be releasing characters pretty consistently. And working to release characters really consistently. So they'll always be, hop back in, play the new character, see what the meta is like with this new character in.
Sure.
We want to also support locals a lot. We want part of the reason why you want to play every week is because you started going to a local in your area that happens every month and you want to get better to beat people in person, right? So
and really, Rivals 1 does not have many local scenes.
So yeah, I think all of those are great reasons to want to keep playing. The team is very, passionate about balance and adjusting and tweaking. So, if you play the game 3 months later, it might be very different in some ways, and we just hope that if people are playing Slippy and literally the only thing that you're doing in Slippy is ranked, there is no other progression system, right? There's none of the AAA bells and whistles. It's just, hey, I get to play Melee on my computer with a ranked mode. Sick. And that's good enough, right?
Yeah.
If we can even, if we can capture a fraction of that, we'll be happy, right? So my hope is that just the gameplay and getting better and learning is also a huge reason why people keep coming back.
That actually follows a different question that someone sent in, which was, is there any worry about releasing a game in a spot where it's like, well, we don't have any single player stuff. We don't have story. We don't have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm of two minds about it. I don't have any data on this, but, I really think to myself, like, how many people really picked up Smash Brothers for the story modes? Like, were people really primarily playing Subspace Emissary, right? Even though that was sick and it was a great mode, don't get me wrong. Was that the hook that got people in? I don't think so, right? As cool as it was, it's great. But I think that for a game that is primarily multiplayer online, having a single player mode might be a bit overrated. I don't have good data for that though, so I could be completely wrong.
Okay.
That being said, the team does value a single player mode. There is plans and it's on the roadmap in terms of Kickstarter goals to have, arcade mode on top of, story mode in the future. And so right now there's a very robust training mode, which isn't exactly like story based, but if you want to like sit down and play by yourself and get better at the game just by like labbing, there is that ability in the game as well. But our hope is that the game is like easy enough to pick up and play that you can hop into matchmaking and have a good time, especially with skill-based matchmaking, right?
And that hopefully, I know an issue that Rivals 1 had or any other small fighting game has had is like, you try to queue in for your first game ever, and it's like, oh, I'm playing someone who's played this for hundreds of hours, and I'm getting just whopped. Is hopefully there's enough player base, especially at the start or for the first year, that if you're new to fighting games, you're also playing someone else who's new to fighting games, and not, someone who used to be top 100 on the leaderboard.
Right. Yeah, that's our hope too. It's like critical mass of people playing the game that, matchmaking is. I will say I am not good at Rivals. I didn't play a ton of Melee. I played a fair amount, and I started playing, a lot with friends and like locally and all that stuff. If I went to any local, I would have gotten O2 in a heartbeat.
Sure.
And I was, throughout the Kickstarter betas, I've been able to find fair matches,
Cool.
and I've been very happy with that. So I think when the game comes out, everybody that's been playing on the Kickstarter beta will have access to the game. And so it'll only be more people playing, right? And then I think if the matchmaking has been pretty good so far with the Kickstarter betas, it'll only get better in terms of being able to find someone close to your skill level once the game launches. So I'm excited for that to see how that goes. Yeah, and the playtest numbers are public.
I've actually
you can find it on Steam charts.
Yeah, I've looked up the Steam charts for both the playtest numbers and compared them to Rivals 1. And I remember at one point I saw that in multiple of the playtests, it was either that it's been bigger or that it's rivaled the like peak player count ever of Rivals 1, which is wild for a game that is not out and you had to back a Kickstarter to get. Right. Like those numbers are crazy.
$50 too. Like it's
not even the base the $30 Kickstarter. It was I'm paying more to get beta access.
Right.
At $50 is hitting numbers that Rivals 1 hit once ever. Another question from someone: is there going to be a support on or a focus on supporting communities outside of North America, outside of the U.S.?
So that's huge, and that's a huge desire from the Ether team. Again, I don't have anything to share about how that would be done, but we would like to. And I would say that, like, in the 21st century, there's a lot more digital ways to support people.
Yep. It's on the radar, at least. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a major concern of ours in terms of like, the Rivals 1 community is heavily concentrated in North America, and so how do we expand out? How do we, capture new regions, new areas, and get everybody to play the game? So there will be something in to help support non-NA communities. We're just not able to announce what that is yet.
Then a couple questions that I don't know if you're the right person to answer. This might be more of a dev question, but
that's fair.
One was, I just lost it. Oh, here. Do you think there's going to be more of a focus on adding returning characters or fully new ones? I know that they're trying to hit both as it's going on.
Yeah, all I can say is both.
Okay.
I think, I am privy to the somewhat loose release schedule. And I know that there's a lot of characters that, like,
I know they've said
can't not make it back, right? There's some like very key characters.
I mean, stuff that they've fully explicitly said is that every character from Rivals 1 outside of the guest IPs, they would like to come back eventually. It's just like, is the game successful for long enough to add them? It's like every character should be back eventually, assuming the game doesn't flop. And then at least from stuff that Dan has said in like the dev streams and different stuff, is it feels like out of everything I've heard is it feels like a pretty even mix of old versus new for like the next 5 that he's like loosely mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, they're two different challenges, right? So the challenge of bringing an old character over is like keeping the spirit of that character alive and making sure that if someone played X character in the previous game, they can pick it up in the new one and it feel more or less the same while making the transition over. And then there's the other unique challenge of creating a brand new character where you can create new things or do things that wouldn't have even been possible in Rivals 1, and you kind of get to start from a different area. We have to think about if we're willing to lose half of our player base when Malo comes out. There's lots of different things that we have to be aware of.
Someone in chat literally is like, I have another friend that also wants Malo back really bad. I'm like, look, I think Malo's cool. If you're... It would be the same as like if Eliana was the very first character on launch. It's like super complicated and really hard to use, let alone like any zoning or anything. But if you're like, yeah, the very first character we announced is incredibly difficult to use, like that's not gonna help people.
And completely different than I think any other platform fighting character. I mean, I haven't played Multiverses or Nasby to know if they've created characters that work the way Malo does. But from any other fighting game I've played, Malo plays completely different than any character. Don't think badly of me. This just came up on my TikTok feed. I couldn't help it. But it was Jeff Bezos on Lex Friedman's podcast. Now, I'm not big fans of either of those people, but Jeff Bezos said a thing that I actually kind of liked, which was when you have data and you have anecdotes and they disagree, your data is usually what's wrong. And as a stats guy, I was like, what are you talking about? Like anecdotes are what you don't trust. And the way he explained it was actually really interesting, which is, if everyone's lived experience around you disagrees with the data, then you're measuring the wrong thing to come to your conclusions about the data, right?
Sure.
Which I thought was a really smart thing to say. And what I've really enjoyed is, we feel good about this game. Like we feel good about, the playtest numbers are great. The Kickstarter numbers were great. We're like the number 228th most listed game in all of Steam right now, right? And we're driving up all the time, right? Those numbers are great, but what's really amazing is like going to PAXs, going to EVOs, both of which I had to miss. One I was sick, the other one I wasn't in town. But hearing from the people that I have on the team and from the people at Ether Studios, how excited people are in person, the anecdotes you get from people about how excited they are, the passion you see from people asking questions, wanting the game to succeed, like validates the data that I have, right? That, this is going in the right direction. This is going well. And that's really, really great to see. The community passion is like one of the things I miss the most moving from working in esports to not working in esports.
Interesting question from chat quick. Says, I found the single player question that was asked, your answer interesting, because in their head, platform fighters are a mix of two genres, platforming and fighting games. And I'm wondering, actually, I want to rephrase this a little bit because you've experienced looking at like, you mentioned the Steam algorithm and working on indie games. Do you feel like marketing this game, you had said it appeals to a lot of people that tend to like Nintendo games, so like colorful mascots and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you think there's people that just like platformers that are into this, or is this just only looking at fighting games and it happens to be a platform fighter?
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that if you're really into platformers, a lot of the things that make you like platformers don't really exist in a platform fighter. Because the whole thing about like, especially very like tight platformers is
we had mentioned Celeste earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. Tight jumps, doing things and you're not really having to respond to another person. Not just like responding to an enemy that's like an AI. You're responding to another person, which makes everything different, right?
So much more complicated.
Yeah, that being said, like I still think that there's, like I was even saying before, I'm of two minds about like, we could release a single player mode and it be extremely successful and people love it and it becomes people's favorite version of the mode.
Turns out people love speedrunning it, like whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who knows? And it is something that is still going to get prioritized and done. I just, I think we can be successful with a new audience even without it, is basically.
Sure. Yeah.
But again, if publishers always knew exactly what was going to be most successful, then Fortnite's narrative mode would have been the most successful version of the game, and not the completely slapdashed on
The side mode that became, yeah. Yeah, if Chad, if you don't know the story of Fortnite, it's actually crazy. That game existed for months before they had a battle royale mode, and it was supposed to be a weird side game. That was a like, maybe we can salvage this because the game is not doing well. Question from Sobbleboy, and this is one I actually know the answer for. The devs have stated this, but we can just get it out here again. Would you like to have DLC in the future, or are you trying to keep in-game purchases to cosmetics or whatever? So they announced less than a month ago, very recently, that every character in the future will be totally free.
Yes.
So there will be paid DLC, but that will be stuff like cosmetics or however you earn that. I think they've said those are going to be paid DLC, but I think the way it was worded, and you can correct me on this, was anything that is gameplay.
Correct.
So anything that is gameplay is going to be totally free in the future as long as you buy the game once. Okay.
Yeah. If we ever add a new mode, we won't release like chapter 1 of story mode, and then if you want to buy chapter 2 of story mode, you have to pay.
Cool.
That won't be the case, and all in-game purchases will be cosmetic only. That we care about that a lot. We don't want anyone to feel disadvantaged on how they're doing it. And then we'll be sharing more about the system later, but there will be a share of like you'll be able to just play and get rewards, right? You won't have to you won't have to pay to get something, right? There will be ways to just play and get rewards. So
does that make you nervous at all? I feel like I've never seen a fighting game do that before, at least that I can remember.
I think it's a bet. So it is a risk. It doesn't make me scared or afraid because it's the right thing to do, and because the sentiment boost and the awareness of the fact that we're doing this will hopefully lead to more players playing, that it's actually the right financial decision long term, right? I also think we have a very savvy community. We're not a mobile game where we can just ramrod terrible transactions and dark patterns into our games and have people just like accept it. If we ever tried to put dark patterns or like terrible DLC into the game, we would have to deal with community feedback being aggressively negative, right? As it should be.
Yeah.
And so what we want to do is make sure that we're creating a system that people feel good about and feel good about supporting, so that they support it, not a system that they feel like in order to enjoy the game they have to put money in.
Sure.
And also the game has a box price. It's got an MSRP, right? So there is an element of you are paying up front, and we are making money off people just playing the game. And so new content and things added to the game, that's just included in the box price, right?
One other, maybe two, depends on how quick. Similar question to the one that we talked about earlier, but a little bit more focused. Someone was asking about off-brand games, like publishing other games ideas.
So I think I saw that question because they're asking, oh, will you do more fighting games?
Yeah, because before we had said, like, what kind of games are you looking at? But this is a question of, one, I think there's some publishers that are like, we want to corner the market on this style. But then there's others that are like, we want to be the best at indie platformers. But then there's other ones who are like, we don't want our games to compete with each other at all. Why would we want 5 fighting games? We want our games to be totally different.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the genre of game, because I think if you're like Hooded Horse, who is a publisher of strategy games specifically, or Paradox, another like strategy-focused publisher, if you play Crusader Kings, you might also play Stellaris, you might also play Victoria, you might also play Europa Universalis. I think for fighting games, I think people tend to find their game. People will play multiple, don't get me wrong, there are definitely multiple, but I think
from my experience, a lot of people play a bunch. Like if you ask, they'd be like, oh, I play like 4 or 5. But if you looked at playtime, it'd be like, there's one that I play heavily, and the other ones are like, if a friend wants to play it, or like that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've gotten pitches, and we've seen other like fighting games or even platform fighters, right? And our focus right now is supporting rivals, and we feel like signing another platform fighter would just be not smart. Because we want everything to be going on the game that we're working on first. Now, if it was like significantly different enough that we felt like there wasn't competition, then sure. But we are looking at
something totally,
yeah. But then, and so contrary to that, though, is that like in terms of like single player experiences, we have no problem signing like 2 roguelikes, right? Because if you like one roguelike, you'll play another roguelike, right? But when it comes to multiplayer live service titles, I think that people tend to have their game, and we wouldn't want to compete internally for that.
Yeah, like I do think there's a ton of crossover in fighting games, especially traditional fighting games. You see a ton of people who are like, oh, I play each of them. But usually there's one that's like, this is my focus right now, and then I'll play the other one in friendlies or at casuals, but it's not the one that they're queuing up for nearly as much. Yep.
Right.
Someone just says, I like Rivals 1, and that's sick. I also love Rivals 1. Don't
game.
stop playing Rival. I've seen some people that I've seen some sentiment of like, oh, it'll be sad when Rivals 1 isn't. It's like they're not taking Rivals 1 off Steam. Like, please play it. I'm sure that there's going to be at a lot of events still. I'm sure that it has a spot for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and Dan has been very adamant that they are going to continue to support it. Like, I mean, you know, new content might not be flying in, but you always have workshop to make the new content or try new things if you want to. And, you know, the servers aren't going down anytime soon. So, like, they're going to keep supporting Rivals 1. And we will continue to support Rivals 1 at events and stuff where appropriate. So.
Oh, awesome. Cool. No, I would love to see worlds where it's not just the thing that happens in most fighting games. Ironically, not Smash, but the thing that happens in most of the, like, well, Street Fighter 6 came out, so now no one's playing. There are no events have 5, unless it's like, here's the retro game block that we brought back. Yeah.
I think the 2 games are also different enough that like there's a reason to play both versus, you know, Street Fighter 5 and Street Fighter 6. Street Fighter 6 is just a better version of Street Fighter 5, right? I don't think that's a controversial statement. Maybe it is. Having not played it, I've heard the end of 5. By the time 5 finished up, it was fantastic. But I think most people just agree that 6 came out so strong right out of the gates. Yeah.
But it's Rivals 1 and Rivals 2 are as different. Maybe not as different, but in a lot of ways I think of it the same as like Melee and Ult, how they're just one has ledges and walls and grabs and all of these different things that just don't exist.
Right. I mean, my dream is that, like, you know, Rivals 2 being successful means even more people learn about Rivals 1 and play
100%.
Rivals 1. Like, there's a world in which Rivals 2 being successful actually makes Rivals 1 more successful, especially for, like, events and locals and stuff. Because you might have people coming out for Rivals 2, and they're like, oh, well, I used to play Rivals 1, and I'll play Rivals 1 here, too, now, and they wouldn't have come out otherwise. So I think there's a world in which, you know, 1 still does really well.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Even if, like, I'm sure the Steam charts are going to take a hit when 2 comes out, but
I'm sure,
especially at in-person things, I could totally see it being the like, oh yeah, let's bring this back. Let's play.
Yeah.
I was gonna say anything that you want to plug, which I usually ask like other guests I've had on, but you've kind of spent the entire time plugging the fact that you work for Offbrand and that the game's coming out sometime in the next 4 months. So for
I will say
4.
I mean, you can follow me on Twitter. It's just at Bryan_Herren. And just know that, like, we are very receptive. So feel free to always message me a question, you know, ask, you know, we have a very large Discord for Rivals of Ether, and they're pretty receptive, and that community is awesome as well. So just like, we want to hear your feedback. We're making this game for you guys. Any feedback you can give us is valuable. And, you know, excited to hopefully live up to our the promises that we've made so far in terms of how this game's going to do. I feel like we do. I can't wait to be able to play it every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And you are not joking about being very receptive to stuff. You and I have messaged about random things. I've messaged other off-brand people. You literally reached out to me to say like, hey, we like the work that you're doing. Can you, like, if you ever want to talk about stuff with us, we're super down. Like, all of that kind of stuff has been really cool. Thank you for hanging out. I had a great time.
Absolutely. Thanks, chat. Bye, chat.